Yes, here's your offering. You might as well have gone to the other side with him. Ha ha. Amidst blatant mockery, my mother-in-law poured beer on me. I'm currently packing for a few nights stay. I suddenly heard from my mother that my father has passed away. I am hurriedly preparing to return. When I mentioned going back home for the funeral, my mother-in-law seemed very offended and said, "You don't even do the chores, you're just planning to use my son's money just for a trip," and other ridiculous sarcastic remarks. I live separately from her, but I have been seeing her almost every day for the past few months. Because my husband gave her a spare key without asking, she comes and goes as she pleases. Every day, she points out something about the housework along with insults, and if I talk back, she even resorts to violence. However, in front of my husband and son, she acts all sweet and shows no signs of her violent nature. She smiles a likable smile, laughing that she's happy to spend time with her family of 3. Obviously, I'm not included in that 3. So, even when I told her about my father's passing, instead of showing concern for me, she only worried about the transportation costs for me to get back home. Honestly, I'm exhausted. It's heartbreaking that my first visit home in a long time is for my father's funeral. But if it means getting away from this house, then it's worth it. That's what I thought as I silently packed my bags alone. Oh right. Why don't you just jump off a bridge while you're there? You're just an eyesore anyway, and you don't need to come back. Ha ha. I've reached my limit. My name is Cromie, and I'm 33 years old. I live with my husband Sam and our 5-year-old son Tim. Currently, I'm a stay-at-home mom, caught up in daily chores, but there was a time when I too pursued dreams for the future. My dream was to become an interpreter. For that, I enrolled in a language-focused college far from home. It was my first time living alone, and it was daunting, but those days were also fulfilling. Through classes and studies, I experienced the joy of working towards my dream and the thrill of a widening world. I even got to study abroad through a program, learning not just about language, but the wonderful deep connection of understanding people's hearts. After graduating from college and stepping into the professional world, it felt like I was living a dream. Starting my career as an interpreter, I was also entrusted with translation work, living fulfilling days. Every day, I immersed myself in work, confronting different languages and cultures. Each time I encountered new words and expressions, my heart raced with the joy of testing my abilities. Interacting with colleagues was also enjoyable and stimulating. Working together on tasks, we developed new perspectives and ideas, allowing us to grow. During those days, a friend introduced me to Sam, a co-worker who was a genuinely good person. He not only attracted people with his bright smile and charm, but his way of speaking also had a compelling aura that convinced listeners. I naturally opened up to him. Every time I experienced his kindness and thoughtfulness, I felt myself increasingly drawn to him. Gradually, we grew closer and eventually started dating. Sam often talked about his family. His father was strict but proud of his noble profession. His mother was kind and always thoughtful of him. Through his words, he clearly had a deep affection for his parents. I felt that he was a family-oriented and kind person. And when he told me, "You are a wonderful person, just like my mother," I felt delighted. As our relationship progressed, we discussed our future and began preparing for marriage. It's an era of gender equality, and I want you to fully enjoy the career you love. Sam understood my feelings towards my work. We talked about how many children we wanted, and even considered calling each other's mother's mom right from the start. I thought there was no one more perfect than him. With him, I believed we could build a wonderful family. When we met each other's families for introductions, just as Sam said, his strict father was reserved but polite, while his mother welcomed me with a kind and graceful smile. "Promi, you're good with foreign languages, aren't you?" "Yes, I currently work in corporate translation and interpretation." "That's a wonderful job. But remember to look after Sam once you're married." "You can continue working, of course." It's tough for just one person to work, but supporting your husband is the first step to building a good home. Though his mother's tone was polite, her words gave me a slight sense of discomfort. However, I made my point clear. "Of course, I value both my family and my career. Sam respects my feelings, and we want to support each other." Her smile remained unchanged, but it seemed to conceal something. "It's okay, Chromie is exactly the wonderful woman I hoped for." Relieved by Sam's words, I wondered if my sense of unease about his mother was just my imagination. Amidst our hectic days, we finally became husband and wife. I envisioned a bright future with Sam, juggling both family and career. However, gradually Sam's attitude began to change, and his views on the domestic roles of men and women became evident. "Do the house chores however you want, don't let me get in the way," Sam said. He wouldn't help with meals, cleaning, or laundry at all. What he meant by letting me do as I liked was that I should handle everything, but I could choose the order. If I were a stay-at-home mom, I'd understand, but we both work, right? Let's do the chores together, not just me. "What are you talking about? Aren't the chores women's responsibility?" "It's the era of gender equality, so women can have careers too. But if the household chores aren't done, you should perfect managing the home before going out to work." He stated as if it were an absolute truth, which made me frown. But Sam quickly added, "A woman who manages to do the housework and still has spare energy should work. I'm the type who needs time to think over words carefully before speaking." Before marriage, Sam would wait for me to respond, but now he'd rush through his words and end the conversation before I could reply. When I managed to gather my thoughts and express them, he'd act displeased as if the discussion should be over. Gradually, it became a habit that I did all the housework, and Sam didn't help. Then, a new problem emerged. Sam began leaving on weekends to accompany his mother shopping while I was caught up with household chores. When I asked him to at least help with the chores on weekends, he retorted, "I have the right to enjoy my own time too. Since we got married, I only see Mom on weekends, that should be fine. You should enjoy your time too, after you've fulfilled your responsibilities at home." And then he left. Sam's excessive dependence on his mother started affecting our relationship. Before marriage, Sam called her mother or mom, but he gradually started calling her mama. I understood then what he meant by wanting our children to call her mom. It was because he reserved mama only for his mother. At first, I was perplexed. But as I got busy with work and household duties, I stopped worrying about it. During this time, I discovered I was pregnant. I was joyful and hoped this would awaken Sam's sense of responsibility as a father, and that he would join me in parenting. However, my hopes were quickly dashed. Sam bluntly told me, "When the baby comes, you should quit your job and focus on housework and childcare." I couldn't hide my shock. "Why would you say that? I plan to continue working because I find it fulfilling," I replied. Sam just scoffed at my response. "Ha ha, fulfillment, What are you talking about? There's nothing more important than children for a couple. Where do you plan to put the child while you work? Are you going to make the child feel lonely just for your little sense of fulfillment? I'm against it, Sam forcefully stated. And then, his mother joined in supporting him. Sam is right. Until now, sweet Sam has just been putting up with your whims. From now on, you need to fulfill your role more as a wife and as a mother. I was just dumbfounded. Seeing Sam belittle my job and his mother agreeing with him stirred up turmoil within me. They neither tried to understand my dreams and sense of fulfillment, nor simply wanted a submissive wife and mother. This brought on a wave of sadness and helplessness. Yet, I had no intention of quitting my job. I couldn't imagine living on Sam's salary alone after our child was born. I planned to take maternity leave, receive allowances, and then work and support the family by sending our child to daycare. But, to my shock, Sam had gone behind my back to my workplace and communicated things about my resignation. He even suggested to them that I wanted to quit, but the company wouldn't let me go, painting the company in a bad light. Since I had informed HR of my intention to stay, they were not pleased. It's fine if you leave, they said with a grimace, and I felt like I had been ousted from my place at the company. Yet, when our beloved son, Tim, was born healthy, I was enveloped in a feeling of happiness. I was truly relieved that Sam and his mother adored him. However, as Sam's affection for Tim seemed to grow, it felt like his love for me was fading. Moreover, he began to control all my actions. By the time Tim was about to turn 5, Sam gave me just enough money for living expenses, and I was not allowed to keep any receipts unsubmitted. When I took Tim out to play, I found a GPS tracker installed on my smartphone, and downloading messaging apps like Line was forbidden so I wouldn't contact other moms. But as Tim was starting elementary school next year and wouldn't need rides, Sam banned me from going out except for shopping. At the same time, he took my smartphone with a smile. Lounging around unemployed with a smartphone is a waste. Plus, any school communications will come as paper forms, so no issues there. Then, citing the cost as a waste, he cancelled my smartphone plan. By this time, it had become normal for me to obey Sam. He was a good father to our son, necessary for him. I made excuses to myself, tired of confronting him as he spewed insults. Sam's dependency on his mother worsened, treating me as if trying to clone his mother. How to load the washing machine, hang clothes, the order of bringing them in, folding them, and even putting them away. The frequency and sequence of vacuuming, and even the taste of cooking, had to mimic his mother's. Why does it always taste different from mom's cooking? I've told you many times, I can't stand it anymore. Amidst Sam's angry voice echoing in the kitchen, I recapped the meal, mindful of Tim being nearby. To prevent Tim from hearing our exchanges, I desperately maintained a smile while altering the dish as he ordered, focusing on calming his anger. During cooking, I distracted Tim with his favorite toys and picture books. One day, while I was doing housework, my mother-in-law unexpectedly visited. Sam had invited her because he was dissatisfied with my cooking and housekeeping. Looking at the food I was preparing in the kitchen, she frowned and said, "You should learn to cook more like me, you can't make Sam happy like this." Her comments then extended beyond cooking to other household tasks. "The way you fold laundry is sloppy. Sam can't be happy if his shirts are wrinkled. You really can't do anything right, learn to fold exactly like I do." Her words were domineering, always spoken in a condescending manner. Sam likes things clean, and your clumsy cleaning doesn't satisfy him. Learn from my methods. Confused, I responded with a forced smile. Yes, I understand. I'll try harder. Sam, witnessing our interaction, smiled happily, patted my shoulder, and said, "Mom is always right. You should learn more from her." I sighed inwardly. With each harsh word and demand from my mother-in-law, I felt like I was losing more of myself, and my anxiety deepened. Before I knew it, my mother-in-law had become a constant presence in our home. I steeled myself for further patience to protect my son and survive in this household. Then, Tim's 5th birthday arrived. Not only my mother-in-law, but also my usually busy father-in-law came. Though he was a man of few words, he looked at me and asked, somewhat surprised, "Cromie, have you lost weight?" Caught off guard, I responded, "Oh, really?" Immediately, my mother-in-law interjected, "Oh, don't be so insensitive asking a woman about her weight. Cromie has been dieting lately. It's not good to diet right after childbirth. But now that Tim is 5, it's okay for her to lose weight," she said, fixing me with a forbidding gaze. I wasn't dieting, but I could only respond quietly with a yes. Her word was law, after all. "Come on, let's go inside," she said, nudging my father-in-law towards the living room. Watching their backs, I touched my cheek and wondered, have I really lost that much weight? There's plenty of leftovers, and it's not like I'm not allowed to eat. But indeed, there have been many times when I missed meals while cleaning up or doing tasks Sam told me to do. I hadn't realized it myself, but maybe I had lost some weight. Just then, I heard Sam's voice from the living room. "Cromie, what are you doing? Come here and serve the food." Instead of pondering if I had indeed lost weight, I reacted to Sam's voice, saying, "Yes, sorry. I'm coming right now," and hurried back to the living room. I was working non-stop, cooking and cleaning up without ever sitting down. At the dining table, everyone else was having a good time, giving Tim presents and taking pictures. "Mom, come join us," Tim called out to me. Then, my father-in-law also showed concern and suggested, "Why don't you sit down for a bit, Cromie?" But at that moment, my mother-in-law interrupted. "Cromie is just so eager to showcase her cooking, especially since it's been a while since you've visited. She's really putting in an effort. And besides, she's a daughter-in-law from another family. It's best not to meddle too much with someone else's wife," making it clear that she didn't want me joining at the table. Seeing this, my father-in-law, perhaps mindful of how to treat women nowadays, apologized to me repeatedly with a shocked expression. However, I only harbored thoughts of escapism, realizing Sam's eloquence must have come from his mother. This happened a few days after Tim's birthday. My mother-in-law and Sam had gone out shopping together, appearing quite friendly. Tim was napping after exhausting himself through play, and I was getting some housework done. That's when the home phone rang. Sam had insisted we keep a landline for convenience, but it rarely rings, and when it does, it's usually his mother who answers. Calls for Sam or from Tim's preschool go to his cell phone. Calls to the home phone are usually telemarketers or wrong numbers, so it's mostly left unanswered when they're not around. Whether I answer the ringing phone or not, Sam gets furious like a raging fire. Once, I ignored a call that turned out to be from his company, and he yelled at me for being the cause of missing it. If I answer and it's a sales call, he accuses me of wasting money on things we didn't buy. My mind races, wondering which option will keep Sam from yelling. Eventually, the ringing stopped, only to start again immediately. The persistence suggests it must be someone with a real need to reach our home. With trembling hands, I picked up the receiver. "Promi, thank goodness, I can't reach you at all." "Mom." As I responded anxiously, I heard my mother's familiar voice from the other end. But her tone was serious, suggesting it wasn't a call with good news. Tentatively, I asked what had happened, and my mother, choking up several times, told me, your father passed away this morning." "What? Why, Dad?" I stammered in reply, and my mother's voice was filled with sorrow as she continued. "His condition worsened." She quietly informed me that my father had been hospitalized for some time and had passed away this morning after his condition deteriorated. Unaware of my father's illness due to being under the constant watch of Sam and his mother, I was engulfed in confusion and guilt. My mother had tried calling their home phone several times since my smartphone was taken away. Each time, my mother-in-law answered and lied that I was not available, never connecting her to me. When my mother couldn't reach me, she asked my mother-in-law to pass on messages. But she never did. My mother had asked several times, but my mother-in-law, feeling accused, strongly told her not to call anymore. Learning of my father's death devastated me. My father, always my ally and understanding supporter, was no longer in this world, and I could hardly believe it. When I said I wanted to attend a specialized college away from our hometown, my mother had hoped I would go to a university closer to home. It was my father who supported me during the conflict with my mother. The shock of my father's death, compounded by the harsh treatment from Sam and his mother, nearly broke me. I couldn't help but sob uncontrollably. "Promi, are you okay?" my mother asked with concern in her voice. I couldn't respond, I could only cry. Sensing something from my demeanor, my mother said in a knowing tone, "Come home soon." In a small voice, I told her, "I don't have the funds." "Don't worry, I will take care of the train ticket," my mother assured me. Her words brought a warm relief to my heart. Supported by my mother's kindness and compassion, I steeled myself to face the news of my father's passing. When I broached the topic of the funeral with Sam and his mother, who were watching TV in the living room, their faces showed disgust. "I really don't care about your father," Sam said indifferently. Then, my mother-in-law coldly said, "Going to your family home means you'll have to take the train. That costs money, and above all, it's just a hassle that I don't want to deal with." Just hearing her say it was a hassle nearly made me lose my composure. But making her angry now and potentially not letting her attend the funeral would be the worst-case scenario. I held back and turned to Sam. "Look, I'll go to the funeral just with Tim. Also, my mother is sending us the train tickets, so it won't cost us anything," I explained. Sam sighed irritably and said, Someone unemployed doesn't understand anything. It looks bad socially not to attend your wife's father's funeral. Fine, I'll go alone, but you prepare everything." Then my mother-in-law chimed in. "Is Sam going alone okay, really? I can't believe a daughter-in-law would put her husband through such trouble," dripping with sarcasm. Sam, in a coddled tone, said, "Mom, I can't let you handle such a hassle. Dad will insist on going if he finds out, so just keep quiet about it. Promi, don't say anything unnecessary," he warned me. Amidst their heartless conversation, I felt sadness, but remained silent. A few days later, while Tim and I were packing, my mother-in-law used her keys to enter the house. I tried to entertain her as usual, but her cold gaze pierced through me. "Just hurry up with the packing, do it in your room, you're in the way," she said as she pushed me into my bedroom. "Let's go play over there, Tim," she cooed, trying to take Tim with her. Then, Tim shook his head and answered, "No, I want to help Mom." My mother-in-law flashed a disingenuous smile and said, "That's sweet, and I'm sure your mom appreciates it. But we need to hurry with the preparations, and your mom can't focus if you're around. Why don't you go and play over there so you won't disturb her?" She then took Tim away. I sighed and resumed packing in my room as instructed. After some time, I suddenly heard my mother-in-law's angry voice from the living room. "Hey, Chromie." More than being called out loudly, I was worried that Tim might be startled. I stopped packing and hurried to see what was happening. Upon opening the living room door, I immediately looked for Tim, but couldn't find him. Neither was Sam there, so I thought they must have gone to the park. Suddenly, I heard heavy footsteps from behind. Turning around, I saw my mother-in-law with a broad grin. "Here, an offering. You might as well have gone to the other side with him, ha ha." She then splashed the beer she was holding onto me. I was momentarily stunned, not understanding what had just happened. My vision blurred. The smell of alcohol stung my nose, and I felt the liquid dripping from my hair down my cheeks, making me wonder why I was in such a situation. Unconcerned with my distress, my mother-in-law relentlessly spat out cruel words. "With a dirty room like this, a daughter-in-law who makes my dear Sam and Tim live like this surely belongs in hell." As the chill from the beer seeped through me, her anger only grew. "Look at this mess. There's dust flying around too. Your cleaning is sloppy. It's because you lack domestic skills that things end up like this. You're useless." Every morning, I clean the living room and wash the sofa covers. It was the same today. Yet, I noticed an unfamiliar towel thrown about, and what looked like dirt scattered around. It was clearly tampered with by someone. Seeing her smirking, I suspected my mother-in-law was behind it. I thought so, but couldn't talk back. The beer dripping into my eyes began to sting. "Ah, right. Why don't you jump off something while you're there? You're just an eyesore anyway. And you don't need to come back. Ha ha," she blurted out. "Why must I be blamed so harshly just for attending my father's funeral?" Her words left a deep wound in my heart. And then, tears rolled down my cheeks. I couldn't tell if the tears were from sadness, the sting of the beer, or both. My heart was dominated by a deep sadness and a rising anger from within. "Understood," I replied, biting my lip. With the funeral to prepare for, I took Tim and used the train tickets my mother had sent us to head back to my hometown. The view from the bullet train window was calm and peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm inside my heart. Yet, escaping that hellish house brought me some relief. Tim was uncontrollably excited about his first bullet train ride. I asked him, "Tim, are you having fun?" He responded with a beaming smile. "I'm happy to be out with you, Mom." His smile warmed my heart. As we returned to my childhood home, the familiar scenery greeted me. The landscape around the house remained unchanged from my memories. The lush garden trees swayed in the wind, and the old fence encircled the house. Seeing it brought a sense of calm to my heart. When I opened the front door, a familiar scent wafted through. The house was just as warm and comforting as I remembered. My mother was there to greet me at the entrance. "Welcome back, you must be tired," she said with a smile. At her words, I felt a sense of relief, and could no longer hold back my tears. Tim squeezed my hand tightly, looking at me with concern. Then, my mother gently spoke to Tim. "It's okay, your mom is just a little tired." She reassured him with a kind smile. She then invited Tim and me inside the house. "Come in and rest a bit," she said. I stepped over the familiar threshold and, for the first time in a long while, I slept peacefully. When I woke up, my emotions had settled significantly. Then, I shared everything that had happened with my mother. "That's awful, I can't forgive them." My mother expressed her anger clearly. She wrapped my hands with hers and said, "You've become so thin, you've been through so much." Taking a deep breath, she continued in a firm tone. "You should get a divorce, there must be a happier path for you. Your father always wished for your happiness." While listening to her, I glanced at Tim, playing in the yard, and said, "But Sam and my mother-in-law have always been selfish and unpleasant for me. But to Tim, they are his father and grandmother. They do care for him. Divorcing would mean taking them away from Tim." Thinking of Tim, I couldn't bring myself to say I would divorce. Sensing my feelings, my mother spoke up. "Earlier, while you were sleeping, I talked to Tim, and he told me, I like Grandma here because she is kind to Mommy," she revealed. I was surprised to hear that. My mother continued. "He said he wishes Mommy would always smile. Children really do notice a lot." Then I remembered Tim's words during a high-speed train ride, "I'm happy to go out with Mommy." At that moment, I realized Tim was aware of the harsh treatment I was enduring at home. I thought I couldn't let him stay in such a household any longer. And then, I made up my mind. "I'm getting a divorce," I declared. My mother nodded silently. During the period of my father's funeral, I had started preparing for the divorce. But when I faced the documents, fears about the future and the deep sorrow of losing my father shook me deeply. Can I manage on my own? I wondered. The harsh criticism from my mother-in-law and Sam had eroded my confidence and eaten away at my heart. Yet, during such times, the presence of Tim and my mother supported me and kept me strong. At the funeral, Sam, as usual, showed his good exterior, acting kindly towards the grieving widow and her mother, offering kind words to my mother as well. "Are you okay, mother-in-law?" he asked politely. He asked kindly, "If there is anything we can help with, we're here to support you." My mother, while smiling, couldn't hide her anger and disdain for Sam as she responded, "Thank you, that's very kind, but we couldn't possibly impose. Just having Chromie and Tim around is comfort enough for now. That's okay with you, right, Sam?" Under that pressure, Sam seemed to falter, stammering, Of course. Chromie, please take care of your mother-in-law." "Well, I'll be off then," and hurriedly left. After the funeral, following my mother's advice, I decided not to dull my resolve, and continued to stay at my parents' house. The stable environment at home brought peace to my heart, allowing me to reflect calmly on recent events. Eventually, Sam, unable to tolerate my absence any longer, called me and berated me mercilessly. "How long will you laze around at your parents' house? Mom is handling your duties, always relying on Mom. And now you're burdening her. What a lazy bones, get back here and take care of the housework." Sam's voice over the phone only spread discomfort in my heart. Up until now, I had obeyed Sam's words out of fear. But upon reflection, I realized they were nothing more than the ramblings of a selfish, unreasonable man. Why had I ever listened to him? It was clear that such an environment had deeply affected my spirit. Tired of enduring his unpleasant words, I simply replied understood, and quickly ended the call. A few days later, after leaving Tim with my mother and promising to return soon, I headed back to the troublesome house filled with those difficult people. Upon returning home, I saw my mother-in-law's shoes at the entrance, which alone stirred a sense of discomfort within me. As soon as Sam noticed my return, he openly displayed his anger, shouting, "Just how many days do you think you've been gone?" His voice echoed throughout. My mother-in-law, seated heavily on the sofa, chimed in without missing a beat. "You really are a failure as a daughter-in-law, not taking care of Sam and just playing around at your parents' house. What a lazy person you are." Her words filled the room with venom and pierced my ears. I silently took in her words, but unlike before, they didn't corrode my heart. As the room filled with their reproaches, and I reached my breaking point, my mother-in-law began to run out of breath, and finally finished her complaints. I chuckled lightly and retorted, "Wait. Are you out of breath? Could it be a lack of exercise?" And then added sarcastically, "But let me remind you, didn't you yourself tell me never to come back? I was only following your instructions." My mother-in-law and Sam both looked shocked at my words. Sam yelled, "How dare you talk back to your mother like that? Who do you think you are?" With a calm smile, I replied, "If that's the case, let's have someone else speak instead." I then invited someone into the living room. "Is that all you have to say?" my father-in-law asked slowly as he entered the room. "You?" exclaimed my mother-in-law, shocked as she stood up from the sofa. Her eyes wide open, she stared at my father-in-law. A calm anger appeared on his face. "What is the meaning of these outrageous words?" he demanded. My father-in-law's voice was harsh, and the mother-in-law stood petrified, flustered. It was just because Cromie was neglecting her chores and hanging out at her parents' home, she pleaded desperately. Hearing this, my father-in-law's anger intensified even more. "Don't lie, Cromie went back home because of her father's funeral. You've been hiding this from me," he accused, glaring at the mother-in-law and Sam. "How do you even know that?" she exclaimed in shock. After saying that, my mother-in-law glared at me, directing her anger towards me. "Cromie, you told him, didn't you? How dare you, a daughter-in-law, speak up like that? It's cheeky." Sam joined in to support her. "Exactly, a wife should listen to her husband. That's the right way." This caused my father-in-law's anger to explode, his fury echoing throughout the room. "Enough is enough. I've always thought your behavior was off, but this is just despicable," my father-in-law said sternly to my mother-in-law and Sam. He had long harbored suspicions about how often my mother-in-law frequented our home. Lately, he'd grown even more suspicious of her increased visits to her son's house and had questioned her and Sam about it. Initially, they both evaded his questions. But under his persistent interrogation, they finally admitted that I had returned to my parents' home. However, they claimed I was just jerking my household duties to hang out at my parents' home. Yet, sensing something was off from the atmosphere between my mother-in-law and Sam, especially during my haggard appearance at Tim's birthday, my father-in-law decided to visit my parents' home. Upon his visit, he respectfully offered incense to my father and expressed his condolences. Furthermore, he apologized for his absence at the funeral, acknowledging he had been unaware. He then asked me why I hadn't returned home yet. I was deeply impressed by my father-in-law's sincere demeanor, and I told him everything about how I had been treated without holding anything back. However, when I relayed this history to my mother-in-law and Sam, they vehemently denied it. "They're just fabrications by Cromie. Have you forgotten all the good things we've done for you?" they exclaimed. Then, my father-in-law calmly spoke up. "I have developed many individuals in my career, and still manage a team. I believe I have a good eye for people. I can distinguish between lies and the truth." With those words, my mother-in-law and Sam were left speechless. Then, my father-in-law glared at my mother-in-law and declared, "Your marriage to me was arranged by our parents. I always had a hunch you looked down on people, but I never imagined you could be so contemptuous and dismissive of the deceased. I said earlier I can judge people, but your presence has been the stain in my judgment. I no longer want anything to do with you." He then angrily left the scene, declaring his severance from her. As she chased after him, pale-faced and unsteady, she cried out, "Wait, if you leave me, I'll be in trouble." While staring at the dazed Sam, I spoke with resolve. "I won't be controlled by you anymore. I'm going to live my life my way from now on. We're done, you'd better brace yourself for the divorce," I said, and left him standing there as I walked out of the house. Later, I returned to my childhood home and began living with my mother and Tim. I was taking it easy, following my mom's advice to relax for a while, but one day, my mother-in-law showed up at our doorstep with Sam, yelling, "You're the reason Mom got divorced. How dare you initiate a divorce? That's so presumptuous. You should respect your husband more." Faced with their unreasonable demands, I said, "There's nothing left to discuss, leave," as I tried to push them out of the entrance. Suddenly, Sam lashed out and grabbed me. Then, my mother-in-law joined in, pulling my hair. "Ouch, what are you doing?" At that moment, my mother, who was attending to guests in the back of the house, heard the commotion and appeared. "What are you doing? Get away from my daughter." In a fury, my mother intervened, pulling me away from my mother-in-law and Sam. "This is my house. Get out of here right now," she commanded, forcefully expelling both Sam and my mother-in-law. A guest, visiting my father to offer incense, had the presence of mind to call the police. And the authorities thankfully arrived promptly and took them away. I hugged my mother tightly, tears welling up as I thanked her. "They say a mother's strength is unmatched. You'll soon be just like me," she said with a laugh. After that, I quickly sent the divorce papers and various documents to Sam. The claims for compensation due to emotional distress and his inappropriate behavior when he stormed into my parents' home, including child support, had become a significant financial burden. Sam, dissatisfied, tried to confront us again at my parents' home, but was turned away at the gate because I had consulted with the police in advance. As the police held him back, he yelled, "It's your fault for not being like Mom. Why should I have to pay all this money? I'm going to tell Mom on you." I watched from the window as the police, holding back Sam, displayed a complex expression at his overtly dependent behavior towards his mother. Despite Sam's previous bluster, he seemed to have been severely reprimanded by my father-in-law and ended up accepting all our demands. Through a lawyer, I safely received the compensation and child support. However, my relief was short-lived as harassment from my mother-in-law began. One day, when I returned home, I found several letters scattered in front of the entrance door. With a creeping sense of unease, I picked up the letters scattered in front of my door and read through them. They were filled with complaints directed at me, calling me a failed daughter-in-law, and demanding that I return Sam's happiness. Holding the letters, I called the police to report the harassment. The police assured me that they would focus on patrolling around our house from now on. Later, during one of their patrols, they caught my mother-in-law scattering letters and took her in for questioning. The letters, which were evidence, were confiscated, and a restraining order was issued to keep her away from us. Finally breaking free from the suffering. And as we began to walk a new path in life, I filed for damages against my mother-in-law for infringing and threatening our lives. This was not only about seeking compensation, but also about reclaiming the self-respect that had been damaged by her actions over the years. When I finally received a fair amount, I felt that I had truly reclaimed myself. Months after the divorce, I've been spending peaceful times with Tim and my mother. Although I didn't return to my former company, I have started to settle well into a job at a different company in the same industry. Despite relying heavily on my mother's help, life as a single mother isn't easy. Yet, seeing my energetic Tim makes me feel like I can handle anything. Raising Tim into a capable adult has become my source of strength. My mother's presence has been a significant support for us. Although she can be overly critical at times, I know it's just her way of showing love. We support and encourage each other in our lives. A few months after the divorce, as I was getting more accustomed to my new life, I finally made plans to have lunch with a girlfriend, something I hadn't done in a long time. This friend was also the person who introduced me to Sam. I had informed her about my divorce, but it had been a while since we actually met. I hadn't shared the details of the divorce with her. At first, we caught up on each other's recent events, and then the conversation shifted to our work and personal lives. That's when my friend made an uncomfortable face. When I asked what was wrong, my friend hesitated and then said, do you think this might be the reason for your divorce with Sam? She showed me her smartphone screen. It appeared to be a video shot in the deli section of a supermarket. After a while, the video showed Sam happily sampling food with his mother. "Sam, try this, it's delicious. Here, open up," his mother said, feeding him a sample. "It's really tasty. But today, I really want Mom's omelette rice. Mom's cooking is my favorite." Sam was seen sweetly clinging to his mother in the video. I was speechless. His clinginess had clearly increased. My friend spoke slowly while watching my stunned face. Actually, this was accidentally captured while filming materials at a client's supermarket. This is what you'd call a mama's boy, right? I was a bit puzzled and answered, "Well, maybe." My friend suddenly leaned over the table with both hands and bowed her head. "I'm sorry for introducing you to such a weird person," she apologized, then continued, "I had no idea he was like this. He had a good reputation at work." I responded sympathetically to her apology. "Don't worry about it, it was just my poor judgment." My friend, who had looked apologetic, then continued in an angry tone. "And to think he was really like this, after the divorce. Sam started bad-mouthing you in his department, saying you couldn't even manage household chores properly, and that his mom had to teach you." I could almost picture Sam and had to struggle to keep from laughing. My friend's stories went on and on. "But somehow this video got out, like it spread, and it even came around to me," she explained. As she talked non-stop, I remembered how she always loved gossip and listened, smiling to myself. Everyone saw the video and said, "His wife must have had a hard time," and suddenly no one believed the bad things they used to say about her anymore. After that, he got labeled as a mama's boy and a liar, and before you know it, he had quit his job. My friend explained. Hearing this, I understood. Sam, always more talk than substance, and with a ridiculously high pride, probably couldn't handle how he was treated at work. Then, with a serious look, my friend added ominously, "It's only natural he gets what he deserves for putting you through all this." My friend said, a bit of a gossip and loose-lipped, but genuinely caring when it matters. It dawned on me just how much of my time with important friends like her had been stolen by that marriage. When we parted, she said, "Let's do lunch again soon." Realizing how precious it felt to make such a simple plan brought a newfound appreciation for the ordinary joys. Afterward, I heard that Sam and his mother, ousted by his father, moved somewhere unknown. Now, he doesn't even bother showing up for his visits with Tim. Tim doesn't seem to miss him or force any meetings. Even my father-in-law, with whom I still talk, doesn't know their whereabouts. However, the child support is deposited regularly, so they must be alive somewhere.